Hello, today I want to talk about approaches to tarot and different possibilities of thinking or mindsets that you could have that could help you conceptualize what we're actually doing during a tarot reading. Which, I think the opinion about what that is, there's probably as many opinions about that as there are tarot readers. But if I share my opinion on the possibilities of what I think is going on in a reading or with the deck in general, maybe that'll help you kind of decide what you agree with or disagree with and start to zero in on what specifically you think is going on whenever you are reading tarot or whenever you are choosing a tarot deck to use. I'm going to be doing my makeup today while I talk about this because I've been in this negative feedback loop about time recently. Time befuddles and annoys me. My hope is I can talk about this topic while doing something else I enjoy for myself, and that will show myself that I have more time than I'm telling myself I have. I don't know. It makes sense to me. I'm at a point right now in the school year where I have to proctor standardized tests, which means I have long periods of time during the day where I am allowed to be bored, which is usually associated with some kind of negative feeling. But personally, I think it's a gift to be able to be bored sometimes. Get a little time to start making connections between things that maybe you didn't notice were connected, or think about them in a new way, because you are forced to slow down. You're not allowed to read a book or do any grading or have your phone out or anything when you're proctoring exams. You are just circulating around the room and observing. But I think that the time that you are forced to spend maybe spacing out, I think those are really valuable times. Whether you realize it or not, you are putting yourself in a perfect headspace for making connections between things that, maybe on the surface level, when you first think about them, maybe those things don't seem connected at all. But that's where creativity is. We've kind of figured out that there are no new ideas. There's just remixed ideas. I think that anytime when you're bored and you can't have something to occupy your time is a really good opportunity to start making these creative connections. And that's how I feel about tarot cards as well. Tarot cards are essentially pieces of cardstock with ink on them. There's nothing really inherently true about tarot cards. It's very subjective. And attitudes about that have changed over the years. Right now, we're living in a time of just extreme individualism. And so the take on what the meaning is behind the card is really a lot more subjective. And since so much of tarot is based on the reader's intuition, or possibly even the seeker's intuition, if you're doing it the way I like to do it when you're reading for others, what's my next step? Browse. Okay. Because it's so subjective, you have just so many different opportunities for meaning, but this is kind of how I like to look at it. You've got your 78 cards. They all have pictures and words on them. And you're looking at them and you're like, I don't know what any of this is. But you can kind of start asking yourself questions about what you see and coming up with answers. And a lot of the time, the question and the picture or the words or the numbers on the card don't really seem to have anything to do with each other. But it is in that moment of connection between two things that seem unconnected that something new is born. You just have a question and you pull a tarot card and it shows you an image that seemingly has nothing to do with your question, but it allows you to get out of your own way and kind of free associate. Why? It looks like my brow pen's leaking all over the place. That's cool. That's super cool. I asked it to do that, so that's fun. So that it kind of allows you to get out of your own way and find meaning in something that, like today, the images on the cards might not have a lot of meaning to you unless you really look into um, art history or Neoplatonism or alchemy or numerology or astrology or history, just depending on which deck you pick. And so to me, it's just an opportunity to create space for you to have this combination of ideas that gives you an answer or a revelation that you weren't thinking of prior to pulling the card. I think about combinations of cards the same way. The tarot deck, you can kind of consider it like a little universe. And in that little universe, you have all of these characters that kind of know each other and interact with each other, and you are being given the opportunity to witness those interactions. And so it might be cards that don't seem to have anything to do with each other, and you kind of have to do a little bit more work to make meaning between them. You might need to study the symbols a little bit, or you might need to lean into what the titles are referring to. Like, who is this in medieval society that, what is temperance? If you want to know what any of these products are, just ask. But chances are they're Trixie Cosmetics because I'm obsessed. Another way to think about tarot or approach tarot is through the psychological model. So the psychological model depends on signs and symbols. You might be thinking about color symbolism. And in the deck, two cards that don't seem to have anything together, like connect each other together. They have a big block of like solid red in both of those cards. And you're like, okay, wait a minute, what is the connection here? Like, I shouldn't just ignore these two cards because on first thought, where I'm sitting there thinking about the definition or thinking about the keyword or whatever, it seems like they don't have anything to do with each other. Instead, I'm going to take this visual symbolic cue of the color red. And, depending on your intuition, you might feel in that moment that the color red means warmth. You might think it means death. You might think it means anger. You might think it means love, right? It's going to be in the context of the question you asked, or it's going to be in the context of what's happening visually in the picture, but it's also your intuitive reaction to it, right? One question that people ask a lot is like, okay, I know that the tarot cards are supposed to have something to do with astrology or numerology or the Kabbalah. Do I need to know about those things in order to read tarot cards? And my answer to that would be like, only if you want to. If you are interested in alchemy or the Kabbalah or astrology, I would say it would probably benefit you to approach tarot with that knowledge or through that paradigm, because that is information that you already have that's going to help you see more connections between the cards. I would also say, if that's not knowledge you already have, but you're interested in studying it, absolutely go for it. But you don't need to know anything about any of that stuff in order to read tarot cards. I, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck was designed by people who were members of a secret society called the Golden Dawn, the Order of the Golden Dawn. It is one of the most popular decks in the world. It was reprinted in the early 70s, maybe even 1970, and widely distributed, and it just took off like wildfire, because that deck, it's not the first, but it was like a major printing in the 1970s where they weren't pip cards. It wasn't like the Marseille deck or the JJ1 Swiss. You didn't just have two cups on the Two of Cups. There was a scene that kind of informed you about a way to interpret the Two of Cups on the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. That meant that people who didn't have a background in the Golden Dawn or astrology or numerology or any of these other kind of esoteric ideas or matrices, they were able to look at the pictures and intuitively make connections between the pictures and decide what the answer to their question was. And so I would say, no, you don't have to learn anything outside of tarot to read tarot cards. However, you might want to. I do think that, if you really like the psychological model where you're looking at signs and symbols, even if you're not in the Golden Dawn, it would probably be smart to learn a little bit about the symbolism that they used and what their aims were in order to understand some of the symbols that are on the cards. But also, if you're not interested in that, you absolutely don't have to. Another thing to think about with the psychological model is archetypes. And we see archetypes specifically in the face cards, traditionally called the major arcana. Waite calls them the 21 keys. And then also the court cards. So that's your king, queen, knight, and page cards. A lot of them depict people. Some of them depict kind of wider concepts like temperance or strength. But then some of them are people like the Empress or the Hermit, right? Those are all archetypes that we're able to access through the collective unconscious, right? And if you enjoy Jungian psychology or maybe even just pop psychology or self-help, you are probably already aware of the concept of archetypes. And the psychological model would probably be a good approach for you for that reason. Does that mean that that has to be the only way you approach it? No, but you kind of are going to approach anything that you're doing with whatever experience you already have, right? You're not an empty vessel. You come to the tarot with your own personal experiences and knowledge, and all of that can be applied to the pictures and the titles on the card. Another way to think about tarot is energy. Tarot works because everything is energy, and you are energy, and the cards are energy. And by attuning yourself and the deck to the same energy frequency, you're going to get messages. Or I feel like a lot of people who talk about energy and tarot are not really saying anything specific about how it works. This idea of like everything being energy has been around for a very long time across cultures, and it seems to kind of have a resurgence every few years just as different ideas reach Western culture from Eastern culture. And we can get into Orientalism on another day. But in the 1970s, when the hippies embraced Hinduism and whitewashed it and turned it into cults here in the US, sorry, not sorry, that is what happened. We kind of saw a resurgence of talking about everything being energy. And I was not alive for that, but I was alive in the 90s to see those ideas resurface and spread thanks to the internet. You know, in the 19th century with Madame Blavatsky and Theosophism and mesmerism, they were also talking about energy, equating that with Eastern concepts of, you know, chi or prana. And you still see that conflation today. I'm able to hold two ideas in my brain at once. And on the one hand, I can kind of be a little dismissive of the energetic model just because I don't think people really delve into it too much. And you see it a lot in pop psychology and self-help stuff. This kind of like just basic blanket statement of everything's energy, it's all the same thing. But then at the same time, I can feel the energy shift in a room, and I'm like annoyed with people who say they can't. I don't understand that. I feel like that's something I've always been able to do, and it's not, I don't, it just happens. It's not something I'm thinking about. And so I'm always like surprised and even a little annoyed. So it's not that I like dismiss that theory entirely. It's just, it's not what I'm thinking about when I approach tarot. You can also follow the spirit model. It's a very useful way for a lot of people to approach tarot. That tarot isn't just a tool that removes the noise from your brain so that you can see connections or have new ideas that you wouldn't have had otherwise, but it's actually that your guides, spirits, your personified deity, your grandmother are speaking to you through the cards, that the cards are a tool that creates a window into the other world that spirits inhabit, or gods or angels or demons or whoever it is. And that by using tarot cards, you're kind of establishing a common language between you and your guides that you can use to get really accurate readings. Another way to think about the spiritual model in tarot is more of like an animistic idea, kind of similar to the tarot cards as archetypes, except with animism, the tarot cards are alive. Everything is alive, kind of like everything is energy, right? Everything is alive, everything has its own force. And so these personalities that you see on the card, they are actually living personalities, the same way that a tree is a living personality. Or anything made from the tree is a living personality. Personally, I think it might be even more simplistic to approach tarot thinking of it as a book. Have you ever read a book that just changed your whole perspective on shit? Have you ever read a book that like made you think totally differently about something that you didn't even know you had an opinion on? If you love reading and you really find value in books, it really might make sense to you to approach tarot as 78 pages in a book. And all these different characters on the cards are capable of moving between pages and talking to each other. It's a book that could change your life or change your perspective. And it's a book that changes with you as you grow and develop and change. And the last way I want to talk about the tarot is just a gauge to see how you really feel about something. Like you're asking the cards, what should I do? And your reaction to the message in the cards is the answer. So for example, one time when I was a kid, I couldn't decide between doing two things, so I decided I would flip a coin. One side of the coin was one thing, the other side of the coin was another thing. And this is kind of a common tarot spread, right? You have two choices, you have two possibilities. If I go this way, where will that lead me? If I go this way, where will that lead me? And so I defined which side of the coin was going to be which activity. And then I flipped the coin and saw the result was heads. And in that moment, thought to myself, oh man, I was actually hoping it would be tails. So it doesn't really matter what the result of the coin flip was. Now you know what you want to do. It was that emotional gut reaction that you were looking for, that maybe you felt guilty wanting to do that. Maybe the other thing, maybe doing laundry feels a lot more important than going to the movies or whatever it is, and you were feeling guilty for wanting to go to the movies. And then you flip the coin and you get laundry and you're like, oh, no, I was really hoping to go to the movies today. Just because the coin said laundry, does that mean you're going to stay home and do laundry? Maybe you've decided that it's a bad idea to do anything the coin flip didn't say. Or maybe your reaction to the result of the coin flip is more important than the results of the coin flip itself. And so I think that is also a helpful approach to tarot cards. It's that initial reaction that tells you more about what's important to you and what your values are. And that could be more useful than the picture on the card or the keyword or the definition in the book if you look it up or whatever it is. Let me spray real quick. Ah, refreshing. So look, because I'm at this point right now where my days are kind of taken up with a lot of extreme boredom, you might be seeing me talking about tarot while doing something that looks totally disconnected from tarot. And I kind of like that opportunity because it's possible that while doing something mundane and maybe even a little boring, I'll have a newer or more interesting idea than the one I wrote down, and it might even make a better video. I'm doing my best, y'all, okay? I'm doing my best with what I got. And what I got right now is some crazy hair. Crazy. All right, y'all, thank you very much for tuning into this little chat. And if you stayed this long, do me a favor and leave me a comment down in the thingy below and let me know what other topics would you like to hear me talk about in terms of tarot cards and what they are, how they work, different decks. I definitely don't know everything, but I have been doing this for a while, and so I've kind of seen a lot of things and tried a lot of things, and I might have some suggestions for stuff you can try that would help you out. So let me know, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye. How's that? I think this might be okay. This could be fun. This could be a little different. I like reflections. Chris and I have been watching Robert Altman lately. And I really like the way he uses reflections. I guess I should try recording with my little microphone